Hi. Okay, we're going to try this again. I have been at this all afternoon trying a variety of different technologies. So here we go. What I would like to do right now is to go over just a really short PowerPoint about the present level. And it highlights the major components of writing a present level. And then I'll just talk through it a little bit. And then I also will go over Marty's evaluation and talk about how we can read through an evaluation, and as we're reading through, how we can then figure out, where each thing goes. And that document is going to look a little bit like this, but you can see I have all kinds of different notes and things. So what happened is when I was grading the present levels, there was a lot of confusion about the different parts of where information should go, if it should go in cognitive or in the academic or social emotional. And so I just want to clarify some things so that we're all on the same page. I think what's really important about this is when just to have some continuity. IEPs are going to be different from state to state, but at least if we have some continuity and we know if I am concerned about a student's social and emotional, and I want to just double check on different assessments that have been done or the history, I can go to the IEP and just look under that section and find some information real quickly. So that's kind of that common language and vocabulary is important for us. And so with that, I'm going to click over, and I'm not sure if you can still see me or not. If you do, I apologize because it's been a long day already. So and we'll just go from there. So the next thing that we're going to look at is just, like I said, a short PowerPoint. Okay, let's see, I'm just going to minimize that. I do apologize for this because with the PowerPoint, my program is giving me some trouble, and if I put it in slideshow view, what ends up happening is the whole program shuts down and sends an error report. So I need to get that fixed. For now, we'll just look at it this way though. So we're talking about writing a present level. The first area on the IEP is the cognitive functioning. And when we talk about cognitive functioning, what I want you to think about is this is really just where we talk about the results of psychological testing. We don't do psychological testing every year. We may or may not even do it every 3 years for a reevaluation. It's really talking about the child's ability. What is the child capable of? Versus later on for the rest of the IEP, we're talking about the child's performance and how the child is doing right now, or the achievement, I should say. So in this section, we're talking about what is a child's ability. A lot of times the school psychologist or whoever did the psych testing would actually write this section out for us. But we're talking about, there's two things that I want to address here. The first is I think we should always, always, always name the assessments that we're using. Now, there was already I was talking with another faculty member this morning. We were in a different meeting and we were talking, and I said, she said something about never naming tests. And I said, wait, I'm telling my students to always name the test. And so we had a little discussion about it, and we have differing views. And so think about what your school district wants. I'm a firm believer that we should name the test just so that I know as a teacher, I can go in and I can say, oh, they used the whisk on this one. Oh, they used, a different kind of test. And it just gives me some background information. Now, that might be hard for parents, and I'm not sure if that's why this other faculty member was saying that she doesn't like the names of tests on there or not, or if that's a policy. Because parents would maybe look at WISC 4 and think, well, what the heck? But if we do a good job of also then explaining that test, and I know our school psychologist and the one that I worked with in the school district did just a really fabulous job every IEP meeting about explaining, especially for new parents, the testing situation and things like that. We don't need to put all of that in there in the cognitive functioning, but we can do some explanation of what that test means in parent-friendly language. All right, so with the psychological testing, we want to talk about the student's strengths and weaknesses. So if a student's strength is in nonverbal comprehension, we want to highlight that. We also want to highlight the areas where there might be difficulties. And that will really kind of set the stage and tell us, you know what, the child, this might be, let's see, let me take a look at one. The spatial reasoning might be very low for this child. And so that will have an impact on our expectations. The child's ability is not as high as it should be. So we can adjust what we're thinking throughout the rest of the document. So we always want to describe the strengths and then the areas to work on, or not to work on, but the areas of difficulty or weakness. One thing that we don't want to put in this section is the actual IQ score. And I think, to me, this is a matter of privacy for the child. Again, your school district might be different, but we never put the actual IQ scores anywhere on documents except for the report about the entire psychological test. And the parents obviously receive a copy of that report. So that's where we actually keep the IQ score. The reason is the IEPs ideally are shared among other people that are working with the child, whether it's the classroom teacher, a para. You might, if a para educator is working with your child, you might say, here's the IEP, I just want you to be aware of it. These are patterns of strengths and weaknesses with the child. And, I don't let paras keep the IEP, but the classroom teacher has a copy in her room. The gym teacher usually has a copy, the librarian, the music teacher, the Spanish teacher, all the people that are working with that child should have a copy of the IEP, so that we're all thinking about the child in the same terms and abilities and where the child's at right now. But we all don't need to know the child's IQ score. So that's one thing that I would not put in there, but I would name the test. So if we go on to the next slide, on the next one we are talking about the academic performance. And really, when we're talking about academic performance, it's going to vary if you have preschoolers versus high school students, but we still want to cover the main bases. What are the academic skills that the child is working on right now, or has been for the last while, for the last year? So it would probably be things like reading, writing, social studies, science, math, all of those kinds of things. And we want to give a really good picture of the child right now. Where is that child at in reading? So again, I'm going to say that I would like you to name the specific assessments you're using. Again, just partly, hold on one sec, please. Partly so that if I walk in to this child, if I'm fresh to the child, and I see that the child is able to read level G, to read at a level C, excuse me, if I'm able to see that the child is reading at a level C, I want to know what we're saying. Is that Fountas and Pinnell, or what is it? So we want to be able to say that. I'm going to pause for just a minute, get a cough drop. Okay, I apologize because now I have a cough drop in my mouth, but as you can tell, I've been talking a lot today. So, all right, so for the academic skills, we really want to take a look at each component, whether it's reading and then writing, math, and so on. And we want to talk about what are the child's strengths in that area. So what does a child do really well with in reading? And then what are the areas of difficulty again? And we also want to name the assessments that we're using. So there were a couple of people that used key math assessments, or like if you used Marty's example, I think it was they used key math. So then you want to name it and describe it a little bit, again in parent-friendly language. What I also believe is really important is to provide examples. So if you say, let me think, I'm thinking of one right now. If you say that the child, if you're talking about writing and you say that the child has difficulty coming up with ideas for writing, you might want to say things that we have been working on in the past is using graphic organizers, making an expert list. You might want to just name a couple of things that you've been doing with writing. And then You can say, John has experienced the most success with a variety of graphic organizers. And then you could well, then I would also, if you say that the child is spelling at the phonetic level, according to Gentry's spelling stages, then I would want to give an example of what that means. So I might say, for example, he might spell cat, K-A-T versus C-A-T. So then the parents know I'm saying phonetic level. It's helping other people see what I'm talking about, other teachers understand, but at the same time, I'm making it in friendly language for the parents to understand. So I'm giving examples. I'm trying to really build a nice picture of what that child's doing. We want to talk about their learning style. If we say that the child works best in groups, that's a great thing to put in here if we've noticed those kinds of things. Assignment completion, that part can be in here. As far as if getting work done is hard, it could also be in the emotional social area too, the behavioral part, or and other places. We want to say if the child is meeting those general education expectations. So we want to say, for example, in reading, I might say something like, John is reading at a level C. John is a first grader and he's reading at a level C according to the Fountas and Pinnell leveling system. Okay, that's one thing to say. We know what level he's at. We know according to, what system are we using. But then we also might want to go ahead and say grade level expectations for the end of first grade are level K. So then it kind of says, you know what, he's in the middle of first grade and he's reading a level C right now. He's got a long ways to go. So we might want to make a comment such as that. What one person wrote, and I like the way that she said this, and she said it for every specific part, is you might say something like, John's reading skills inhibit him from making progress in the general education classroom. So then we're saying that he is in the general ed classroom, but he's not making progress right now. We can then also say, actually before we even say that, we might want to talk about the accommodations that we're making. Maybe there's partner reading. Maybe he is in reading recovery, what she probably would be. Maybe there's help with RTI. Maybe there's paraeducator support. And rather than even just saying that a student might have paraeducator support, we want to state what that looks like. So we might want to say to complete assignments, and I'm going to jump up to 5th grade now. If a child is still having difficulty with reading, I might want to say to complete reading assignments in social studies and science, John takes turns reading the text with a paraeducator. Or a paraeducator reads to John and John summarizes the reading after each paragraph or something like that. So just kind of examples. I'm not saying that we lay out our entire plan of how we're teaching or anything like that. We're just providing 1 or 2 examples when we think the parents might not understand what we're talking about. We also want to talk about assistive technology that might be used. If a child is having trouble with writing, maybe we use the computer. Maybe we use something like a Dragon dictation for the child. So we want to point out the assistive technology. What are the things that are going on in the classroom setting or in the educational setting that are also helping the child achieve to be successful? That goes along with on our rubric, it talked about how it says describe how the disability affects the child's involvement and progress in the general ed curriculum. So we can talk about how the disability affects the progress, but we can also talk about the supports and the accommodations that we're doing to help the child be successful. Okay, that's academic performance. The next thing I want to talk about is the communicative status. This part was another part that people had a hard time with knowing what to put here. And I can totally get it because this is a part that our speech teacher was the expert on. She often wrote in here the kinds of things that regarding the voice, tone, fluency, articulation, talking about is a child able to communicate his or her needs, Is the child using age-appropriate language? Or are they still talking about themselves in past tense, things like that. So oftentimes the speech teacher would be adding things into this area with, input from everybody, but she would be sort of the expert in that area, as the school psychologist would be the expert in the cognitive area. So it really is a team effort. We're all working together on this. For those of you that had a case study, for example, Marty did not address anything at all about communication. So in that case, you could just put, there are no concerns regarding Marty's communication skills at this time. And just put a statement like that, though, so it doesn't look like you forgot it, but that you've thought about it. There are no concerns at this time. And probably put in something, instead of saying there are no, you can put in, the team feels there are no concerns regarding da-da-da-da. Okay. The next part is the physical characteristics. With this part, it's really, and this is a really easy part to really include the parents' voices or the guardians' voices, but what's the medical history, what's the vision, what's the hearing, fine motor, so cutting, coloring, writing, all those things, gross motor. If there's OT involved, occupational therapy, you might have that in this section. Just to kind of describe what's going on. If the child's in adaptive physical education, that part would be completed in here too, talking about how he or she is able to participate in the regular classroom. Maybe to go to gym class, the child needs a paraeducator to make sure to explain the game, or maybe for anger, to help out with anger issues during play. So make sure you're articulating that as well. I think the physical characteristics, you might say something like, there are no concerns. John's parents have noted that he is in good medical health. There have been no concerns regarding medicine or medical health. You might talk about medication the child might take. Again, one thing that I got into, and my supervisor said probably don't need to do this, is I would list the specific drugs that the child was maybe taking. And that's not always necessary, because especially if a child has first been diagnosed with something like ADHD, and sometimes they try a couple of different things before they find something that really works well for that child. And so rather than naming it specifically, you can just say the child currently takes medication. Let's see, I'm thinking, hold on a second, I'm going to think for a minute. I know what I was thinking. In this particular part, sometimes there's a long history, and so you might feel the need to explain what happened in kindergarten, in first grade, in second grade, and so on. And this goes along with the emotional social section that is coming up next as well. But rather than do that, I think it works best to just sort of paraphrase what's been happening. So, and just hit the major points. For example, I had a student that was born with a club foot. She had glasses early on. She received OT. And so I might have written, I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but I just basically said, I'm going to say John again. John was started preschool special needs school when he was 3 years old. He was born with a club foot and had numerous other delays as noted by whatever doctor. He has worn glasses since he was 4 years old. And so I want to just give just a short couple sentences overview, but then I really want to get to what's going on right now. You might say John continues to wear glasses for nearsightedness. His medical history has been clear. There are currently no concerns regarding running or jumping or playing based on his club foot or something like that. Can you tell I'm totally talking off the top of my head? I am. All right, let's see. The next one is the emotional social development. This is another area where a lot of times you want to go into the great detail and really name all the things that this child has been through. But what I would like to do instead is just kind of do maybe a paragraph or a couple sentences about the history, and even maybe subtitle it history, and then boom, go on to the what's going on right now. So I have done that in the past. And even in the past when there's been huge changes throughout even each year, I might have written in 2009, 2010, couple sentences, 2010, 2011, just so we could see the progression. In one case, this was really important because of all the work we were doing with the parents and the parenting too, just to show so that someone knew, and it turned out he did move, and so there was somebody new working with him. They could see all the things that we had been involved with as far as in this child's life. So I think that can be really important to do. We talk about emotional and social development, but this is also a part where we want to talk about the behavior. We can do that right in here. We can talk about emotionally, how is a child doing? What kind of coping skills does a child have? What's the child's frustration level? Overall mood? What kind of skills, problem-solving skills is he or she using right now? Things like that. And then social would be peer relationships, friendship skills. You might say, John appears to be well liked by his 5th grade buddies. And then you would go on and talk about, that you might see him on the playground with friends. Or, unfortunately, sometimes you might say, still prefers to play by himself, and explain it. And again, this is a part where you can talk about the behavior. For students with ADHD, this is a part where you can talk about the ADHD here or maybe in the physical. It kind of depends on where to me, it depends on where it's impacting the child the most. Is it impacting him emotionally and socially? Or is it impacting him more just physically with physical agitation, movement, things like that? So to me, there really isn't this is a hard part to figure out where some of these things will go. But just think about the thing that I always do is I go back to, okay, this is what's happening with the child. How is it affecting? So if the child is taking medicine, or if the child is, even if he's taking medicine, if he's still very fidgety, blurts out answers, things like that, I'll need to just think about where does that most impact him? Would it be under physical? Would it be under emotional, social? Do I want to talk about the ADHD under the medication part? So you can just sort of try and figure that out. The most important thing is that it's in here, right? I mean, that's the most important part. Okay. The next one is the adaptive characteristics. In this one, again, this is talking about how is the child as a self-advocate? What about personal hygiene? What about independent living? Is the child able to go to the bathroom by himself? Take care of himself? Is there a need to have deodorant in the classroom because he doesn't do that? With one of my students, we did a whole hygiene unit. We had a whole thing about, what do you do? A social story about what do you do in the morning before you come to school. You should brush your teeth. You should probably wash under your armpits. You should put deodorant on. Make sure you're grabbing clean clothes instead of clothes from the floor. Again, some kids you might need to really talk about this. Others, not at all. And personal safety. This is a place to say too if the child needs to be escorted to the bus or to the parent's car after school for safety reasons, you need to put that in here right now, right here as well. Okay, the next part is the ecological factors, and this one is really just kind of think about the child in the environment. What kind of things, who does a child live with? Family, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, name those kinds of things. What kind of things does he or she like to do in free time? I'm surprised how many kids that I worked with that about the only thing that they liked to do outside of school was video games. So, and also what about community involvement activities? Do they take swimming lessons? Do they do just for fun type of program in the summer? Are they in soccer or hockey or um, gymnastics or any of those things? So it just talks about that. Okay. Um, I think that kind of gives you a little bit of a summary about what kinds of things were, the specific categories and what I see going into each of those specific categories. Now, please know, you can keep in mind that it might be different at your school. Your district might have a different setup for, and where they want the information. And I think the big thing is consistency. And just to make sure we need all this information in here, we want to provide a really well-rounded picture of the child and how that child is doing right now in school and in the educational setting. So that's the big thing. With that in mind, we want to be specific, use examples to illustrate your points. And I just wrote in here, a picture says 1,000 words. So try and help create pictures in the parents' minds of what it is. And I don't mean for every single thing, but just kind of the big ideas. I wrote, if you name a test or assessment, describe its purpose and what it tells you about the child. Sometimes parents might, not know what the WISC means or what the cognitive means, and they might be afraid to ask. So go ahead and kind of describe, why do we do this and what information is it telling about the child. Be positive, and I think this is key. As frustrated as you might be with maybe the parents or the child or the situation, use non-emotional language. I think that is so vital to use non-emotional language. We want to be positive, and I guess what I mean by that is put things in a positive but realistic light. And then finally, to find a balance between formal and informal language. I don't want your IEP to read like a journal article or something from a dictionary, but neither should it read like a conversation between friends. The key is, what's nice about the IEP is you have this document that you're all working on together, coming up with the ideas. Everyone should be having input into it, but it shouldn't be so casual that it would be like just talking amongst friends. The casualness, I think, comes in more when we're meeting with the parents. So we have the document, but then we can talk and explain things further. Okay, I'm going to just switch some screens, and I want to just pull up Marty here, and I have it right here actually. Okay, so this is the evaluation report on Marty. This is right from your CD, your IEP CD. We're just talking about Marty. He's age 12. He's in 7th grade. And what I did, and I apologize, this is only the even numbers of the pages, but it has the basic information for you. This is a report that you might get from the school psychologist. This might be the integrated written assessment report, where you're actually talking about everything about the child, all the different assessments that were done, things like that. But really what I did is I went through here, and this is for a case study. But if we go to the history and background information, right here I just kind of highlighted that this information would go under the Ecological Factors section, but it would also go under the social emotional. I think it would be important for us to talk about that he has a good relationship with both of his parents. And also, we probably want to know that his parents just divorced 1.5 years ago, so it's pretty new to him. This part, he lives with his mother and 15-year-old brother. We don't need to say he was an excellent student, but Marty lives with his mother and 15-year-old brother. That's probably under ecological. Here would be some physical things: general good health, no sensory difficulties, no major illnesses or surgeries, not taking any medication. Here would be part of a social. His parents describe their son as outgoing and energetic. He's sociable and has lots of friends, so we can put that right under the social. When we talk about friendships, he has lots of friends. This part might go under ecological. This is a pretty important part. They talk about how they're afraid that he might end up thinking school isn't for him, and so they don't compare him to his older brother, who was a very good student, but Marty does himself, and he feels like the stupid son. So apparently he's maybe said that before. So that would probably be something good to include under social emotional. We have inconsistent performance that can go under the academic. Remember, we talked about assignment completion. This might go under the writing section because it talks about how he does better on the computer. So in the academic part, but specifically under the writing section. Here's some social and here's some academic. So you can see that when you're reading a report or something, now you would know your child, so you wouldn't need to have a report like this. But for the purposes of this assignment, I think doing something like this will really give you a nice sense of where do each of these things go. It's all information you would know about the child, but it's just putting it in different sections. This is actually the intelligence testing. So you can see the WISC-4. Remember, we're not going to put in the actual IQ score, but all this information does go in the cognitive. This would be an important part to say that his verbal comprehension skills are not as well developed. A lot of times what our school psychologist also did is she would say what that means, what that might look like in the classroom. So that was good. This information could also go in the cognitive, but this would be in its own separate report. So basically the top part up here would be important to put in cognitive. Some of this too, I guess. Okay, and then we have our academics. Here's math. The assessment used was key math. It talked about his strongest areas, and then it also talked about his weaker areas. All right. This is a part that I put for adaptive. This is from the last page. It says he indicated that he learns best when he works with others and uses computers. So this could be under learning styles and academic, or it could be under adaptive too. He's making adaptations for his own learning styles. He's getting to know himself. And I put this under ecological. Okay. So there you go. I just wanted to show you a little bit about how if you are doing a case study, you can go ahead and pull information right from here. And that will ultimately help you out to know, the different sections. I hope that this helps you a little bit anyway when you're thinking about it. All right. If you have any questions about your present level, please give me a holler, and I will let you know. I can try and answer any questions you have. Remember, your goals assignment is coming up, and your goals should come right from your present level. What were those areas that the child needs to work on? Areas of difficulty. How can you write goals and objectives for the child based on those? Okay, thank you so much.